My name is Sandy Moskovitz, and I'm the program director at SWAN. And we're very excited to be here today for the premiere of the RiSWP teaching series. Very, very exciting to have you all with us. This is a 6-part course that's going to be led by our RiSWP leadership team and ambassadors. And we'll get to our speakers in just a minute. But first, we're going to just run through a couple of quick updates. Sorry, we're going the wrong way. All right, so first off, we'll do some quick welcomes and introductions. So like I said, if anyone's new, if it's your first time joining a call, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know where everyone is joining us from. Then we'll have a quick update. So just some exciting upcoming events for everyone. So if you haven't heard, it's the 15th annual SWAN conference coming up May 27th to 29th in Berlin. We have a lot of really, really exciting opportunities for rising stars at the conference as well. And we have one really exciting opportunity. We're looking for some volunteers to help us out with some note-taking, gathering key insights from the conference to help put some takeaways away at the end of the day. And then at the end of the conference, all of the volunteers get to go up on the stage, the same stage that all of our global speakers have been speaking on for the last couple of days, and present their main key takeaways from the conference. And following the conference, the volunteers also write a really nice blog sharing their experiences, what they learned, who they met, what they did at the conference. So it's a really, really great opportunity, to get to attend the conference and meet, some really great names you've probably been hearing about in smart water. And also in exchange for volunteering and helping us out behind the scenes, you'll receive a free pass at the conference. So if that's something that anyone's interested in, feel free. You can email me directly, and we'll drop some links and email addresses here in the chat. We also have some really, really great special discounts for young professionals. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to see you guys in Berlin. Speaking of young professionals and great opportunities at the conference, on the first day on May 27th, we're having a really, really interactive. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be the Level Up Gamification Workshop. It's brought to you in partnership with the Einstein Center for Digital Futures. It's going to be hosted on the TU Berlin campus at the Eins Innovation Center. We're really, really excited. Oh, and it's going to be a really great opportunity to see how we can use gamification to solve real-world challenges and help our wastewater network. So we're really, really excited about that. And here you can meet some of our speakers for the event. So our MC for the evening is going to be John Brailsford, one of our RiSWP leadership team members. Our facilitator for the evening is Bengisu Bersbeck, who's the founder of Sustain All at TU Berlin. She's also an expert facilitator. We're really, really excited to have her on board. She does a lot of work with SDGs, innovation, working with startups. So really excited to have her expertise. And our gaming expert, who's going to be running the live demo gamification part of the night, is Niels Anderson, the founder of Divine Robot. So really excited to have this all-star lineup with us at the workshop. It's definitely always my highlight of the conference every year. Just some other quick RiSWP updates. So for many of you, I think you've joined our previous mentorship series episodes. We've had about 23 of them so far, each time bringing in different mentors to share about their experiences in smart water, how they grew their careers. But now we really want to take this project to the next level, and we need your help for it. So we want to create these mentorship pods. They're going to be small focus groups meeting for like short fixed term amount of time, maybe a month to 2 months, having a few sessions lined up. So right now we're trying to gauge interest, what areas folks would like to receive mentorship in, as well as time zones where folks are, so we can really work the group out and get this event or these pods up and running. So we'll share a link to the survey there. We'd really love your feedback. And just another exciting event that we have coming up next week. It's open access. You're all invited to it. We're hosting this great partner webinar with Arab. It's going to be all about smart approaches to I&I, all about data first, intervention next. So that's going to be on April 30th next week. So we'll share the registration link with you as well for that. And now I'm going to pass it over to Naisargi Dave, a member of the RiSWP leadership team and also a hydraulic modeler at HDR. And I'm going to let her share what we're here for today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And over to you guys.
Thank you, Sandy, and thanks everybody for coming. This is exciting. This is the RISP teaching series. This is sort of like it started from actually my own idea of wanting to learn and breaking into the smart water industry, something I started many, many years ago. And I was trying to find like a good collective of resources in one place. And I was struggling, and there were resources, but it was pretty scattered. So I thought, okay, well, let's try to see if we can, help new professionals who are trying to break into the industry, or the young professionals who want to be in the industry and just entering the workforce. Um, this series will really help all the professionals break into the smart water industry, and learn about smart water networks. So that's why we are calling it Smart Water Networks 101. It's sort of like a coursework, if you will. And I'm really excited to introduce the first class, which is just a general introduction to smart water networks, just like any class. Class one is introduction. And who better than Andy Smith to teach us about the introduction to smart water networks, who actually worked on the SWAN 5-layer model of smart water networks. He will talk about that in just a bit. And we also have Emma Grace, who is the SecOps engineer at Anglian Water. She's also the RISP ambassador, helping me pull this series together. And she's also kind of the star of the show and pulling this class together. Um, you can kind of think of us as teaching assistants to Andy for this class. If you have questions that you don't want to ask, you can directly tell me, and I will be happy to play a clueless student and ask the question. Even if I know the answer, I will still ask it because we need to get that answer directly from Andy. So feel free to ask questions. In my life, there are no silly questions. I am a daughter of a teacher, so there really are no silly questions. But yeah, take it away, Andy.
Right, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So today we're going to talk about the SWAN 5-layer model, and it's really about getting that knowledge as to starting your smart water journey. Okay, so if we move on, Emma, that'd be great. So I'll just talk a little bit about myself, and Emma will back this up, as I love talking about myself. So I've been in the water industry now since 1983, so that makes it 42 years in the water sector, and I've worked for contractors, consultants, and a few water utilities, and I've done that both in the UK and overseas as well. So I've had the pleasure of working in Lebanon, Egypt, Malaysia, and India during my time. And really, I started my career, I suppose, focused in on non-revenue water, dabbled a little bit in the dark side, which is wastewater, but quickly came back to water. Focused really then around network management, and my journey and my career to Anglian Water has really been taking that network management experience, and then transitioning into the head of smart water at Anglian Water Service. So the one thing that's not in my remit at the moment is smart metering, as in for customers. Everything else around data and digital in a water distribution system is I have the pleasure of leading a team of subject matter experts, which are really trying to drive a different future. So really exploring things now, hot topics like AI, machine learning, how we're applying them, and then some things which are directly linked to the SWAN 5 layers. Um, I've been involved with SWAN since 2011, so the only conference I haven't been to is the first one. So yeah, active members of SWAN, and yet again, we'll explain how Anglian Water have taken learnings from SWAN and applied them to our business. And for the last couple of years now, I've had the pleasure to be on the SWAN Leadership Council, which is a real honour. And yet again, this is about how we're driving the business or businesses around the world to accelerate and collaborate in that smart space to drive different outcomes. So we'll move on from there, Emma.
Yeah, I
So
think that's
I'm
all
going to
that's
hand
needed
over
for
to
just a
Emma.
quick.
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to hand over to Emma, and because she's my co-pilot for the day, and you can read into that what you want. And we're just going to test some technology because we want you to interact with this session. Yeah, this is not about me talking to you. This is about how we interact together, and then you get what you want from the session. Yeah.
Yeah, so you should see on your screen now, this is just a bit of an icebreaker. We were warned just before the call that biscuit may mean something else depending on where you are in the world. We're talking about biscuits, cookies, Oreo is a great example. Not talking about the little pastries that Americans usually have with gravy. But gravy is also different in the UK. I'm not going to get into that. But what you should be able to do is just point your phone camera at the screen to scan the QR code, or I will also paste this link into the chat for anyone who wants to access it there. If you could just access that, put your answers in, and we should see them show up on the screen. So this is not only an icebreaker, but also a little bit of a technical test for us, just to make sure everything's working. While we're going through that and while we're waiting the answers coming through, as Andy said, he's not as intimidating as he looks, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the meeting. Better if it's fresh in his brain and we're on the slide so we can talk through anything that's going on. But at the same time, if you are not comfortable asking questions directly, feel free to either put them in the chat or reach out to us, myself or Naisargi, and we will ask them for you. Yeah. I think we only have the two responses, both saying Oreo for this one. It's a very popular biscuit cookie.
Oh, let's not do the cookie biscuit debate now. We haven't got all day on that one. So
Yeah.
I think
Wonder
good.
if they'll ever make a chocolate chip Oreo.
I know if someone could just type another biscuit in or cookie, that would be great. Can we just test the technology? Because we will be asking questions as we go through. And we want your feedback.
I did too. I don't think
Yeah,
it's showing up.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
let me try refreshing it. Ooh. There we go.
There you go.
It was just a little bit delayed. Sorry about that.
Okay.
That's a good lesson. May have to go back and forth a little bit to get it to update.
Yeah, that's great. So we know technology works, and I'm right behind a Biscoff. I think it's great with a cup of coffee. So, chocolate digestive. That must be someone from the UK. That's all good. So we know the technology's working. So we'll move on. So any questions you've got, just ask as we go through. No problem. Right. So we'll get started, should we? So right, when we talk about smart water, it's always quite like to go to a definition. So in terms of a device, so we're all familiar now with smart devices in our home. It's something that is controlled by a computer so that it appears to act in an intelligent way. And intelligence is the key here, yeah? So an example we've got there is a smart washing machine will dispense an optimal amount of water for the load that is actually being washed, yeah? But when we talk about SWAN, the definition is subtly different, yeah? So if we go to the SWAN definition of a smart water network, it is a fully integrated set of data-driven components and solutions which allow us, as in water utilities, to optimize all aspects of the water distribution system, the wastewater collection network, treatment systems. So yet again, it's all about this integration and data-driven components. And this will start to become clear as we go through the layers and we start to explain the layers. So if we go to the next one, Emma, please. And yet again, this is just an illustration when you see where smart is being applied through that man-made water cycle. So right the way from water abstraction, right the way through to wastewater treatment, and then actually returning that product back to the environment. So yet again, when we talk about that, ultimately we abstract from the environment and we return to the environment. So ultimately, as water utilities, we are custodians of the natural environment, and that becomes really, really important as we go forward and start to look at some of the challenges that we face. Next one, please. So when we talk about those challenges, we talked about this earlier, myself and Emma, is that these are just a few. So this is just a few that we've put on there. I think actually the challenges are manifesting all different ways as well. So the big one for us at the moment, I think, is around climate change. So yet again, we're already seeing, for instance, in Anglian water, where I work, the impacts on our infrastructure of climate change. So we're now seeing sort of like increased burst frequencies, and that links to aging infrastructure. So yet again, we operate 38,000 kilometres of water mains, and we've done a lot of work in terms of things like pressure management and ways to reduce leakage. But ultimately now we see burst breakouts at much more frequent intervals. And this is linked to soil moisture deficit much more than it used to be cold temperatures. When we start to think about that, then it starts to bring in the regulatory compliance. So actually our regulators in the UK, and I suspect is the same around the world, their expectations of water companies, both financially and in terms of what customers want, is actually increasing all the time as well. So there's a lot of political pressure in the UK at the moment around things like pollutions. Sort of since COVID, you know, a lot of people like to go wild water swimming, and this has raised the bar in terms of how water companies are interacting with the environment. So yet again, environmental performance, absolutely key indicators. Yeah. And then the other one is then the media perception. So your reputation as an organization. You know, at Anglian, we're a purpose-driven organization. Our values actually support that purpose. And that is around bringing environmental and social prosperity to the region we serve. But yet again, it puts us more under a microscope from the media. You cannot turn on the television at the moment in the UK and a day doesn't go past where there is not something about pollutions or Thames water and the struggles they're having financially, etc. And ultimately, over the years I've worked in the water industry, we used to be the silent service, yeah? So yet again, until something went wrong, nobody contacts you. Actually, our customer expectations are rising, and some of that is how digital technologies have changed their lives. So we live in a more instant gratification society. You know, I still find it amazing that I can buy a $1.99 piece of rubbish off Amazon and it can be on my doorstep within 24 hours. Yeah. So ultimately, water companies and the expectation. The other one we're all facing is operational expenditure. So yet again, when you think about aging infrastructure, that's all capital investment. We cannot afford as utilities to replace all our water mains. So we have to get the most out of that asset in terms of its life cycle. So it needs to have different ways of maintenance, different ways of investment, but also then different operating costs. So yet again, we need to think about maintenance in a completely different way in terms of OPEX expenditure. And actually what we need to do is reduce things like energy consumption. It's absolutely fundamental to the way water operates. So we live in a very flat region. We are the biggest consumers of electricity in our region. And our region is absolutely massive in the UK. So anything we can shave off that bill actually helps then us reduce customer bills as well. Because one of the major touch points you have with a customer is, yet again, an annual billing cycle. And this is also where smart starts to evolve. As you move towards more smart metering, you are interacting with your customer through a display on a daily basis in their living room or in their kitchen, telling them how much water they're consuming. Okay. So as we move on from challenges, and this is a picture which is just down the road from me, so less than a kilometre away from my house. So this is quite a unique environment in terms of this is a chalk stream in the UK. So 90% of the world's chalk streams are in the UK. They are unique. So this is basically a river which is fed from an aquifer through chalk. So it's one of the purest rivers that you will find. Now, this one is actually in very good ecological status, but I'm really passionate about how we actually create a resilient, sustainable water future for all. So yet again, we know the way we're using water as human beings is not sustainable. This then ties into the water energy nexus. So how do we actually start to shape a different future? So I'm going to pose you your first question, and Emma will refresh at regular intervals, no doubt now. So how do you think smart water can support a resilient and sustainable water future for all? So I'm interested in your thoughts, and then we'll sort of move on after that. I don't know, Emma, as my co-pilot, whether you need to do a bit of song and dance as we go through this bit, but while we wait for people to populate it.
You don't want me to sing or dance?
Okay, that's fine. I'll go with Sandy on that one then. She'll be fine.
I should have
Further,
programmed some hold music.
We have to queue up the Jeopardy music.
Actually, in the meantime, I have a question. Chalk stream, Chalk River. Is it, you said you have like the #1 source? Is it really like a local landscape that is
they're basically throughout sort of eastern and southern England. Yes, it's quite unique that 90% of them in the world, and that's mainly because a lot of our we have chalk layers. So basically what happens is that aquifer is being filtered by that chalk as it comes through. So you get like crystal clear water, which at the source you can drink basically. So yet again, when you look at the environment that actually is there, you've got wild cress growing, watercress, stuff like that in those rivers. And actually they're one of the most at-risk sort of river systems, ecosystems in the UK, because generally downstream, traditionally water companies would take this water because it's so pure and your treatment is minimal. So generally where we abstract from those rivers at the moment, all we need to do is shoot it with a bit of chlorine. That's it. It's out the door. So no real filtration needed, no chemical processing. So really, really good. The problem we're now facing is from our regulator is they're saying we cannot abstract from those sources anymore because they are unique environmental ecosystems. So it's putting pressure on us in terms of water resources, and this is great in terms of the feedback that we're getting. So data is obviously a really big one. Decisions is phenomenally good. We've got efficiency in there. We've got water resources, visibility into the system. So these are all the things. Detection and loss, yeah, absolutely great. So I think these are the things that we wanted to sort of explore. So water loss is a really good case study in terms of what we're then talking about. So thanks for that input. We'll move on now. So if we go to the next slide, Emma, and we'll start to hopefully introduce the 5 layers at this point, I think.
Oh, trying to figure out how to go on to the next one. There we go.
So these are the basic sort of the 5 layers which originally came out of SWAN in 2010. So tried and tested. Yet again, so the physical layer, and we'll go into each individual layer, sensing and control, how we then collect and communicate that data. So you can start to see this is all about data. Data management, which is a particular issue, I think, for a number of organizations. So how you structure, how you organize, and how you manage data within your organization. Now, that can be as large and as small as you want it to be. For an organization of our size, which employs 5,000 people plus and has a blend of legacy and new systems, data management is a particular issue. And actually the display part of that is actually quite easy once you've got your organization of your data correctly. But then we come into sort of data fusion analysis. How are we using that data? And we'll touch in each of these layers here. So probably on the next one, we don't need to explain what the physical layer is, but for anyone who's not involved in the water industry, that's sort of like our key physical assets. Now, the way we described how we would use the SWAN layer model in Anglian was we need to actually know what we had. So we'll show you this a bit later. So it's understanding what you've already got. So then by understanding what you've already got in terms of this space, you can understand what you need. So undertake that gap analysis. Identify the potential and value add with accurate costings and accurate support resourcing. So as you go through those layers, you can really start to understand the true cost of smart solutions. So for instance, if you procure a sensor and that sensor costs you $50, for instance, that is not the true cost of that sensor, because as you actually go through the layers and you start to think, well, how am I going to collect and communicate that data? Where's that data going? That adds additional cost until you get to a point where you're actually using that data to make the right decisions. The other thing it enabled us to do was actually identify and protect those critical systems within that SWAN layer landscape. And you'll see how complex this gets when we talk about the Anglian landscape, and it's just for water a bit later. But we identified a number of key critical systems, which if they failed, because they were actually bringing lots of different data sources into them and then distributing them back out, we would go blind, for instance. And it also enabled us to plan for the scalability of new smart water technologies. So where do those technologies fit within our existing landscape? And actually, is it about just adding new technologies, or is it about, when I bring this new technology in, what can I make redundant? So one of the challenges we get from people who use the outputs of smart water systems is, how many systems do you want me to look at? Yeah, we've got a problem now in our SecOps space where, you know, they have 140 different systems that they can actually use to make a decision. How do we actually think about how we condense that and actually bring these things together and integrate them, so the platforms that they actually have to look at are providing more value for them in terms of that integration? There's nothing worse than actually having to make a decision at 2 o'clock in the morning and being unsure what system is going to give you the right result. Yeah. So this all comes back down to trust, and I think it's a fundamental part of how you actually start to maneuver around a smart water system. Yeah, you have to have trust with the end user. Yeah, you have to have trusted data to build that trust. Yeah, so yet again, fundamental to building a SWAN 5-layer model is the trust piece. So as we move on, we'll go now through the individual layers. So when we talk about those physical layer, that can be anything. That could be pipe, pumps, boreholes, valves, actuators. That can be actually anything on your system, or even reservoirs, for instance, water towers, water storage points. So these are your physical assets which actually move your product from abstraction to your customer. And I'll just talk water here. It's exactly the same for wastewater. How do you take the effluent from your customer, go through all the treatment processes, and then deliver it back to the environment? Yeah, so we're talking source to source, so true water hydraulics. Yeah, so that is the physical layer which actually delivers your product to your customers. When we start thinking about sensing and control, we've just got some examples here from our organization. So the top pictures are condition-based monitoring. So this is where we have older assets where we are retrofitting condition-based monitoring. This is proven invaluable in terms of preventing failure, getting early warnings, but also then driving energy efficiency within our organization. EPM is probably something new to a lot of people, but this is enhanced pressure monitoring. So we've deployed around 7,000 of these across our network now, and they are high resolution pressure sensors which enable us in near real time to understand what is going on in our distribution system. And when I first started looking for leaks, going back to the sort of ones on the right, the first leak noise correlator I used for finding leaks on a system was actually about the size of the back of a transit van. So actually, when you look at technology now, these are all handheld devices, and we now have employed 6,000 to 7,000 fixed correlating points within our network in some of our most vulnerable systems. So these actually are fixed in the network permanently, and they perform correlations every night and highlight points of interest to us where we believe there's a leak. We're now taking this further with the use of data, and it probably comes on to the next piece. So how do we bring all this data together? So as you can see here, we've got Wi-Fi, we've got fixed cable networks, we've got mobile networks, we've got radio networks here. So we're using all of these to collect that information from sensors that are, in a lot of cases, buried in our network. So communication becomes a big problem. Yeah. So it's great communicating when you're standing on the ground with your mobile phone. When you put your mobile phone 3 foot underground, how do you get that signal out? So yet again, these are some of the challenges that we face when we're implementing smart water systems. Is how do we collect that information? How do we communicate it? And how do we communicate it in near real time? So we really start to get a different level of insight into the performance of your network. Next one, Emma. Then we come to data management and display. So we've got some examples here of a telemetry system. So yet again, that is where we are displaying data and information around a particular treatment process or a treatment works. We have GIS. So yet again, there's a lot of advances in terms of the ability to now bring live data into GIS through sort of Esri and stuff like that, which we're exploring. There's other things like we've got a hybrid between the two at the moment, which we're exploring. So sort of like GIS and telemetry data in the same place to create that sort of system and situational awareness of what your system is. And behind all of that are your data models. So yet again, how is your data structured and organized? And how is it then feeding those other systems that rely on that to actually provide value for the person that's actually using it? And then we come on to the fifth layer. So yet again, this is how we're fusing that data together, analyzing that data from simple sort of Power BI reports through to sort of like how you interface with your customers. So the top right one is a customer portal where customers can actually land, find out what's going on in their area. So are there any leaks? Are there any disruptions to supply? But then ultimately where we're starting to go is in terms of smart cities, digital twins, so digital twins of a treatment plant, and actually digital twins of your network as well. So we're already starting to explore live hydraulic modeling and putting that in the hands of frontline teams. So yet again, it used to be a very specialist thing, as in you needed to be a fully trained hydraulic modeler. We're actually now working with a company to actually put that capability in a light format in the hands of people who are out there operating the system on a day-to-day basis. That is a complete game changer in terms of changing the way businesses operate through the advancement in terms of smart technology. This is transformation, and it is happening now to everyone in the water industry. So that's a brief flick through the 5 layers. So yet again, from that and what we've talked about, what do you believe are the benefits of implementing a smart water system? So we'll give you a couple of minutes just to think about that, and I can have a sip of my tea, so just to refresh my voice. But no cookies, because I haven't got any.
No cookies, but do you have any biscuits, Andy?
I haven't got any biscuits either. It's a bad day in the Smith household today, I'll tell you, Emma. It's a bad day. Here we go. Are we refreshing now?
Thinking about it. I think there is just a little bit of a delay.
Oh, that's a good one. Also, I'd like to unpack the transparency one. I think that's a really interesting conversation. Yeah. Yeah. So we might save that to the end, because I think transparency is an interesting one. Is that within your organisation, or is that with your regulators is the one to sort of like explore a little bit as well? So I think, yet again, there's a real focus in the UK on national digital twin. So how do actually water companies join with other utilities to provide a national digital twin? And I think, yet again, the use of more open data, etc. So I think real-time situational awareness is absolutely fantastic. Insight is something we talk about a lot. So yet again, and I think we will talk about how we move from being sort of reactive to being more proactive as well as we go through sort of like the call. Yeah. Okay, next one, Emma. So yet again, at Anglian, we used this model. So this is the water landscape. So this is how we applied, and Emma was absolutely instrumental in this. So I can't take any credit for this. It was my idea to map through from source to tap horizontally everything we had in place, what sensors we had. So you can start to see things like we've got district meter in there, we've got pressure points, right the way through to customer, what we had, and then take it through the layers. So yet again, the blue boxes were the physical, then we did sensing and control, we then went to collection and communication, and actually this landscape, and this, well, I think this is the simplified version, Emma, it gets very, very complex very, very quickly, but we needed to do this exercise. This was coming back to understanding what we had, and then the key things, what actual business capabilities were actually being driven off it. So this is the next part. So we started to do, we recognized that the 5 layers weren't quite enough for us. So we, as we do in Anglian, we always add things to something. So we then started to talk about the business processes. So how was this data actually moving through those layers, and what was it actually driving? So who was using it? How were people interacting with that data? But then we realized how that times into business goals. So what were we actually achieving from having this data and these systems in place? So yeah, again, it might be the fact that we wanted to reduce interruptions to supply to customers. We wanted to reduce burst. We wanted to reduce leakage. We wanted, how did it link into water quality? And all those different use cases in terms of water and what we do. And our business goals were really set by our regulator as well. So at the time, we were rewarded for really good performance. So how were we actually investing in those layers to try and drive the outcomes which we were being rewarded for? So we had a leakage measurement, we had water quality, interruptions to supply, our burst mains were actually monitored. So yet again, how do you focus your investment to drive the right business goals for your business? And at this point, SWAN were actually talking about how they needed to refresh the model, right? So yet again, the model, this 5-layer model, works really well in terms of a tech stack. So when you're thinking about when you're implementing a smart water system from a technology point of view, the 5 layers work really well, yeah? And it actually enabled our business to have different conversations around the tech stack. So quite quickly, our system architects started to use the case. But actually, we thought, how do we use it in terms of investment decisions? So I talked to you about our enhanced pressure monitoring program, and we actually used it to articulate the value proposition for enhanced pressure monitoring. Because you can imagine 7,000 or 8,000 devices put in your network, and these were dedicated points that we constructed. So this was a multi-million-pound investment. So we had to clearly understand how that data was actually going to flow through our organization. The same as your product flows through in terms of abstraction to customer, how does our data flow as well, yeah? So you can see on the right, we use the model for a particular investment case, which said, yes, we're going to invest in these physical assets. These are how we're going to collect and communicate that data. It will go through our OT platform, which is our operational technology platform. Also, third-party portals that we have access to as well. But actually, what we were able to do was actually look at things like, how would we actually then implement more pressure management? How would we have calm controlled networks so we don't see those pressure variations, those pressure transients? How would it inform network modeling? How would we mitigate transients? And also, how would it support things like event management? So when we had an event, how could we have visibility of how that network is performing in real time? So we actually used the SWAN layers as the investment case, and it actually simplified the discussions that we had at management board. So we could clearly articulate in simple language, so turning all the complex language in data and digital into a simple thing that people can understand. And ultimately, the outcomes were we would reduce our interruptions to supply, we would reduce leakage, and we would understand and be able to mitigate any properties, the risk of low persistent pressures. And we've been able to do that. So we've driven clear value from the investment decision using the SWAN layers. So there's 2 examples. Understand what you've got, understand that gap analysis, but then how can you use it to make better informed investment decisions? Next one, please, Emma. And this ultimately ended up with a discussion with the SWAN leadership team at the time around how we can drive value. Yeah. So the 5 values, as I said, or the 5 layers are really, really good in the tech stack. But actually what we wanted to do was think about more about value creation. And this is where we need to start to think about how technology is a key enabler, but unless you actually sort out your processes and how that interacts with your people, you will not create value for your organization. And ultimately, this started with the introduction of 2 new parts of the wheel, the segment. So what is the strategic driver you are trying to solve, or what is the challenge that you've got? So it might be non-revenue water, it might be water quality, or it might be that you want to drive efficiency in energy right across your whole system from source to tap. If you start with that driver and then work through these layers, ultimately you will meet a strategic outcome. So your outcome can still be the same. So it might be the strategic outcome you're looking for is to reduce carbon in your organization by 20% by 2030. Yeah. So what do you then need to do in terms of investing in the physical infrastructure, sensing and control, all through the layers to achieve that strategic outcome? And I really love this wheel now in terms of the fact that we talk about value creation. It's absolutely fundamental. It's not always just about benefit. And it starts to bring a different dimension in the conversation around, well, what does smart mean for your people? Yeah. Are you enabling your people to be the best they can be? How do you have a conversation about how does smart improve safety? How does it make people safer in their workplace every day? And we've started to explore that, and it's part of our business cases now. We now know from the work that we've done on pressure management, we don't have people because we now have sensing and control. We collect that communicate that data. We can automatically adjust those settings from the office. That used to be someone working in a chamber or in the highway or doing something at night, which is actually inherently dangerous. We've removed that danger from that workplace. So yet again, smart has got much more benefits in terms of your workforce. Yeah. It enables your workforce to also be more creative, I think, and actually problem solve rather than react to a situation. Okay. So that's fantastic. We will move on to, there's 2 aspects also that I think the layers play out on. And when we start to think about digital twins, there's 2 aspects of digital twins where you play. So the asset life cycle, so in terms of managing the asset life cycle. So yet again, when you start to think about how this drives in terms of people, process, technology, it enables you to plan. So you end up with improved planning decisions because of smart, because you've got more information and more knowledge of your distribution systems, so you can plan more effectively. That enables you to actually design. So you've got enhanced accuracy in the way you're designing. Yeah. Also in terms of how you're procuring. So we need to think about how smart is part of our requests for tenders and work from our supply chain. So yet again, our supply chain has widened. When we start to think about improved speed, quality and safety during construction as well, there's lots of wearable tech now. So smart isn't just about that physical asset, it's about how it interacts with people again. When we start to think about operating and maintenance, yet again, the operation of the asset is the longest part of this cycle. Yeah. So yet again, we need to try and really squeak those assets. Yeah. So yet again, what used to be a 20-year asset life has probably become a 30, 40-year asset life. So how do we maintain differently? How do we prevent failure? Yeah. We have always been reactive. We accept failure. Yeah. So how do we actually use smart technology to really get ahead of that curve? And then also it becomes really, really important in terms of the decision to renew or decommission. So yet again, we know we've got increased affordability and reliability in customer service. So how does this link through to your customers? It's about expanding those secondary use options as well. So yet again, what we don't want to do is decommission an asset and throw it away. Is there a secondary use or post life cycle value for that asset as well? And I think this is where digital starts to play in. So that is the asset management life cycle. But also when you think about the water cycle, the man-made water cycle, the benefits of digital twins across that life cycle are absolutely phenomenal. So yet again, improving operational performance, driving efficiency. We've talked about safety and well-being of personnel. Yeah. Yet again, how does our customers interact with this different technology that we've got? How do we use things like gamification to actually reduce water consumption? How many industries in the world want people to use less of their product? I would say the water industry is quite unique in that space because we know it is a precious resource. So coming back to that resilient, sustainable future, how do we use smart to drive that? And I think you can see it interacts all the way through that, from water supply, water distribution, wastewater collection networks, treatment, and then back to general use. How do we start to create smart cities where water is treated as the really valuable asset that it is? Yeah, I would say water is undervalued, and I would suggest most people in the water industry do. It is that service which people expect to arrive at their house 24/7 whenever they want it, and that also is a food quality product. So we are distributing a food quality product through miles and miles of pipe, and when people turn on, it needs to be at the quality, the pressure and the flow that they expect. That is quite a tall ask, and it's becoming harder and harder. So next one, please, Emma. And this is interesting. So when we start to think about those SWAN layers, you're seeing these horizontally at this point. So yet again, there's some key examples in terms of the physical system. So sensing and control, data collection. So when you start to think about sensors, actuators, advanced monitoring, then you start to move into that digital space. So when we start to think about digital twins, it's quite clear that we have to have data ingestion and integration. We have to manage that data. Then we start to talk about the analytics, the models, machine learning, AI. We are exploring the use of AI in the water sector. And also those physics-based models. So your hydraulic models, your biological models, and they can be static or dynamic. That is your choice at this point in time. But then how do we visualize and present the information to end users? So how are we enriching their lives for them to actually make better informed decisions? So when you start to think about this, this is about user experience, which becomes absolutely crucial to everything we're talking about here. You know, what is the what if scenarios? What are real-time performance dashboards? Augmented and virtual reality, mobile alerts, advanced automation. So the end game in town for us is about how do we actually have advanced automation? So yet again, you know, keeping the human in the loop, but how do we get our systems to interact and make those dynamic changes? But ultimately, and Emma will be a real person who will advocate this, is you need to be secure. Yeah. So if you, the more we become connected, the more exposed we become to cyber threats. So ultimately, this is about becoming a secure and connected utility that makes better informed decisions, runs networks at the optimum level and knows what those optimum levels are, but then can also interact with things when it goes wrong in a different way. Right, next one, please, Emma. So I've touched on one of those, but what do you think are the risks of implementing a smart water system that could be blockers for your implementation or scaling of your solutions? Mm.
I think this one's probably supposed to be old-fashioned thinkers altogether.
Yeah.
It's what you get with technology generating word clouds.
Okay. I obviously think I'm a fashion thinker, Emma, but that's probably another call at some time.
You can think it, Andy, doesn't make it true.
So these are really interesting. So we come up a lot against some of these. So people is a really interesting one, right? The knowledge one I thought was really interesting because part of how we deal with things like the aging workforce is we need to retain that tacit knowledge of our systems within the business, right? And we've been having conversations about how we can use technology to do that. Yeah. So like people will refer to it as the silver tsunami. There's more people leaving the water industry than there is joining it, right? But I will be a big advocate at this point in saying it's the best career you'll ever have. Yeah. If you want to be a multi-millionaire, probably not the water industry. But if you want a job which has a real sense of purpose and fulfillment, the water industry is great. And it's so varied in terms of the careers that you can have. You can have a scientific one, an engineering one, so it's open to you all. But actually, a lot of the barriers to a smart adoption is the business case. And a lot of that is around people's perception that it is expensive. So yet again, people's and that whole piece around reluctance to change. So yet again, one of the things you need to start to explore if you're going to go down the smart water system route is involving change management early. Yeah. So ultimately, this is a big transformational change to your business. And actually, the middle layers within your business actually get it, right? Actually, it's the top layers of your business at exec level and management board level, and probably your frontline teams where you will see most resistance. We're actually working more closely with our frontline teams now. So we're actually creating desire from them to actually have these smart solutions. As long as you articulate the benefits, and what I would suggest is you don't do it to them, you do it with them. So you understand the problem that they have, not the problem that you think they have, because that's always the danger, is you will give them a solution which doesn't actually solve their problem. That is the way to actually implement a smart water system. Cybersecurity, big problem. So yet again, this is about trust and building trust in the solutions that you've got. Transparency, I agree. Yet again, the more open conversations we have in the business and the more we collaborate within our own businesses will drive a smart water system within your organization as well. Great. 13 responses. So we've got most people engaged at this point, which is great. But data is the key to all of this. Yeah. So we come back to this actually. Yes, you can do small pilots, but actually getting your data organized, structured in the right way is absolutely fundamental. Yeah. Next, please, Emma. So I think that's us. I'd like to open up to questions. If anyone's got any, that would be great. But then some general conversations around some of this would be quite useful as well. It'd be great to see some people's faces as well. Initials aren't brilliant. Unless you're eating big platefuls of cookies, and then I don't want to see it necessarily. So
I'm having a coffee, but you can see me having a coffee. Not a problem.
That's fine. Has anyone got any questions or anything they're unclear about with regards to there's 5 SWAN layers and how we've utilised them and how that links to driving a smart water future? Stunned with silence.
Absolutely.
If we can probably give people a minute to think of the question or type in the chat. I will say thank you, Andy, because you covered so many things and I was taking some notes, but in this short time, the number of things you covered about the smart water industry is mind-blowing. You covered like the people part, the jobs part, you covered processes, you covered tech stack, you covered even chalk streams and the source of water, the environmental impacts. One of the highlights that stuck with me was, and I hope everybody like takes it really home with them, is how many industries ask you to use less of their product. And that kind of like really stuck with me. Is we are kind of unique in a way that we want people to use less of our product, kind of, even if it means, it's less money in billing, maybe, but we still kind of like want that. And not many industries do that. And I really love that. I suppose
the other thing, I suppose, is, we started off with sort of the challenges, right? And I think, yet again, if I was going to impart any knowledge, is the fact that all of those challenges, right, are opportunities to do something different. Yeah. And they might seem really, really hard, but actually, if you have that open mindset to how smart can actually support each of those challenges, and what you realize is actually smart supports all of those challenges in terms of what we need to do. It creates opportunities to do things differently. And ultimately, the water sector needs to transform. Yet again, we haven't got people who are now going to work in Anglian water for 40, 50 years. I mean, we've got one guy, I think he's 82. He's only known Anglian water, right? That is not where we're going to be in the future, yeah? So how do we use smart technologies to train younger people and excite people to actually want to come and join our industry, yeah? And I think that's the key. So yet again, that would be sort of like the knowledge. But every challenge you have in your lifetime, there is always an opportunity, yeah? And that's the way to look at it. Don't get bogged down in the challenges. Look at what you can do, not what you can't do, yeah?
Yeah, that is
Right.
awesome.
So here's some future reading, right? And I will always promote the one on the these are two great pieces of work. So I was a little bit involved in the first one. So this was about digital twins. These are available on the SWAN website for you to download and use. They're really informative around digital twins. So the first one was the readiness guide. And this was about how you prepare your organization to move into the world of digital twins. And it probably came out just before sort of like what I'd call the AI revolution. The second document, which was then produced in 2024, was and I'm sort of like co-lead on that document, was around the values guide. So this was about how you articulate the value of digital twins throughout your organization. And before you have your next session, I'd recommend that you all take a look at these. I think the second one, the values guide, is interactive on the website as well. So actually makes it quite exciting to go through. They give you a really good basis in terms of what you then need to know. And we've got a question now, I think. Brilliant.
Yeah. Hi all. Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. This has been great. I guess just kind of a question that occurred to me as we were just talking. I think electricity is also a resource that kind of has a similar, there's an interest in kind of using less of it, but it's also maintaining this distribution network. And I'm curious, kind of what lessons do you think the water industry could take from, the electricity industry or kind of utility space?
It's really interesting. I think, again, when you look at the value proposition, you see water is actually inexpensive compared to power. So again, the ability for power and people like oil and gas to implement smart solutions is a lot easier because the value of the product is there. And actually, one great example I saw was in Italy, where actually there was the power company and the water company were the same company, and all the smart technology that had been developed and deployed in water was paid for by the electricity part of the business. And I think that's the challenge, which became quite stark to me, is from a water perspective, how do we convince people that smart is the right thing to do from a business proposition? Yeah, because ultimately the revenue that we generate from selling that product is not as great, and the product is not seen as valuable. So is there a discussion to say, how do we promote the value of water in a different way, to have a different discussion? Yeah, so it's seen as again another utility. I think for what actually it gives you, it's life-giving. You can't do without water. You can sort of do without electricity in some respects. So I think, again, there's a different conversation to be had around the value of water. But I've got no problem with learning from sort of like the electricity industry, oil and gas, whatever we can take from them and actually deploy in our space. I think we should be doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a really good point, though. I think kind of part of the reason for more innovation, especially in oil and gas, is that there are kind of hard, concrete savings, and maybe there's less of that in the water industry.
Our business cases are now much more multifaceted in terms of the benefits. So we don't just put a business case up which says we'll solve leakage. We look at the whole piece, because when you think about leakage, there's a power and chemical element to that. So you can start to expand your benefits case to, if you said, oh, I've got a business case that saves a megalitre of water a day, it's great, yeah. But also, what is the power element of that? What's the chemical element of that? What is the disruption to your customers? So think much more widely around your business cases. They're not just one-point solutions, because they shouldn't be.
Right. Right.
We've gone over
Great
time now, haven't I?
question. Great question and great answer.
What I would say then, just in the interest of time, if anyone wants to connect with me separately, ask me any questions, just drop me a line and I'm happy to answer them. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for joining, everybody, and feel free to follow up with questions. Do your homework with the reading, and share this and upcoming classes with the YPs or any new people to the industry in your network. And class 2 will be the next one, which is the layer 1 physical assets. We will dive deep into this coming up in June.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andy, Emma, and Naisargi. We learned so much. We'll share the recording with everyone who was here today. And
Brilliant.
yeah, have a lovely day, everyone. Thanks again so much.
Yeah. Thanks,
Right,
Emma.
thanks.
Your support's been great.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Emma. It was fantastic.
Thanks all.
You're right, David. I'm to you for a while. I didn't know you were lurking in the background there. Look.
in the background, lurking, really.
Probably need to catch up with you at some point, young man. All right.
Yeah, no, definitely. Anytime.
Okay. I'm going to drop. I will see you all later. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Andy.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, folks. Bye.